Hi there. I just wanted
Hi.
to introduce you quickly before we have a little kind of virtual tour of your studio. Um, really excited to have you as part of this project. So this is Savinder Bual, an artist who's working with us on expanding dialogues as part of our pilot project with the engineering students. And yeah, I'm going to look forward to going through this presentation and sending it to the other students involved at home. But I'll pass over to you.
Great. So I'm Savinder. Um, I see myself as an artist, but also as an explorer of movement. My practice is experimental and process-led. When making my work, I imagine that I'm a cinema pioneer, moving still images in different ways. And through my work, I intend to highlight the illusory qualities of cinema and also of early animation. So I'd say that my practice encourages the viewer to notice and to question the mechanics of how it is made, and then how in turn moving image in cinema is made as well. So my ideas are informed by pulling things apart to see how they work. And I guess you would call that reverse engineering. And that's as far as I would go with my link to engineering, the way I see it. But other people have said that, well, they asked me like how I've engineered my work, so there must be some sort of link with you guys. So many of my ideas come from pre-cinematic devices, such as the zoetrope that you can see here, and the phenakistoscope, which I'll talk about a bit later. And I love the material qualities of these because they're made of things like card and wood. And also you have to activate them. So here we have a drum. The viewer would spin the drum and look at the slits, or in between the slits, and in this case would see a juggler juggling. So onto the phenakistoscope, it's a disc that you spin in front of a mirror. You look through the slits, and in this case you'd see a galloping horse. So I love these because you have to touch them, but also we're living in a society where things are disappearing quite literally. So things like paper becoming replaced by information on hard drives. I'm going to show you an example later of what I mean. But before that, here's a close-up diagram of a phenakistoscope. And here you can see a frog leapfrogging over another frog. I also like the playfulness of these pre-cinematic devices. So yes, this is what I wanted to show you because I love this. Let's see if it will play. Yeah. Go, you get the idea. So I like to juxtapose everyday materials, tangible materials, often with the immateriality of things like video. And another thing about pre-cinematic toys, they were scientific tools, and they were used by mathematicians and physicists to explore how we perceive the illusion of movement. And to date, still, we don't really know how we perceive movement. There's still debate around that. And then after they were scientific tools, then they became popular toys in the 19th century, not only for children, but for adults as well. And I'm really, really interested in mechanical toys. So here is an Indian dynamic toy. And I saw this on a grainy YouTube video to begin with, and I got really captivated by it. So you can see how this thing works. I've got one here actually that I've made myself. But as you spin, as you pull the bow, there's a string wrapped around a spindle, and then the spindle starts to spin. Okay, so I made one of those, and I worked quite slowly, but then I developed that over a couple of years into quite a few different things that I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to show you how I develop ideas basically, which I've mentioned before, experimental and process led. So the next thing is a piece called Trompo. This is a moving image piece. It's made with a drawing of a spinning top, which you can see here. And as that spins, the paper starts to warp. So you start to get a three-dimensional effect. So I really like that. So that's what I mean about trying to draw attention to the illusory qualities of cinema itself. So I'll just let you watch that for a bit. So to me, there's definitely a connection here between the zoetrope and the phenakistoscope that I just showed you and this contemporary piece of work. The next work I made was a similar thing, but this time the paper is almost like a sail. So it's curved on the spindle itself. And as you can see, there's a flat circle there. But once it spins, it becomes spherical. So this piece is called Sphere. And my videos are very, very short. They're about like 40 seconds long normally. And sometimes they loop. So that just got me more and more interested in this toy, actually. And then I did an animation workshop in India, and I showed people how to use that device and make it. And they were able to animate anything they wanted on top of it. And one person decided to animate a pineapple top. And in India, you can see them all over the road because lots of pineapple sellers selling juice. And I saw this pineapple top rotating and I was completely hypnotized by it. So when I got back to the UK, I bought myself a pineapple, not quite the same as in India, you can find it on the floor. I had to go to Sainsbury's. But anyway, I started to animate this pineapple top, and to my surprise, the leaves hit the string of the bow of the contraption, and it made a scale. And I'm going to just show you what that kind of sounded like. So it made it, well, to me, I'm not a musician, made a musical scale. And that's what it sounded like. So I'm going to play it one more time because that's quite quick. And there you go. So from there, the idea of making a pineapple instrument entered into my head. And then for the next 2 years, I decided that's what I was going to do. To begin with, they sounded absolutely awful and I nearly gave up. But I was living in Ecuador and there were brilliant luthiers there. Luthiers, just if you don't know, make instruments, and also carpenters to help me. I think I consulted around 5 people over those 2 years, and each one inputted on this idea. So I'm just going to show you a bit of video. This is a guy tuning one of those instruments. Okay, and so the first instrument I made, I'm just going to show you that one now. Here's me playing it in a market in Ecuador. So yes, I developed 10 of these instruments. Here they are. They all have gourds on the back. So many of the older instruments had gourds on the back, and so I kind of started off with quite basic instruments and then went on to other instruments like the Indian tambura. But why I'm mentioning the gourd is because the shape of the gourd determines what the instrument's going to look like, rather than the other way around. So here's a few more images of that work. And here you can see the gourds themselves. So I then used these to create a community orchestra in Bristol to address colonialism at Colston Hall, which is a musical named after the slave trader Edward Colston. I'm sure you've all heard of him by now, because his statue just toppled over recently, or was toppled over, should I say, in the Black Lives Matters protests. And it did make me jump up and down for about half an hour, because I was very happy that it came down. But the pineapple, and the reason I use these instruments, is that the pineapple has a very dark colonial history. It was used for centuries as a symbol of power, basically. And I wanted this project to playfully address some of the issues that came out of the name change of Colston Hall from the name of a slave trader to a name that actually we don't know what that is yet. It's going to be revealed in a few months. Some of the participants of this project had never picked up a musical instrument before, let alone performed, let alone gone to a music hall. So here are some of the participants. We all rehearsed with the composer for around, I think it was 8 weeks in total. And this is what it sounded like. So you get the idea. So actually the music was quite joyful. So I wanted to talk to you about that work. So basically all this work has come from that one Indian toy that I was talking about before. And then the other thing I thought I'd talk about was my interest in flight. So flight is a reoccurring theme in my work. And I made this piece, Wing, which I'll play now. Oh, no, go back. Hopefully it will start to play. Okay, sorry about that. That's the nature of Zoom. But I made this piece, Wing, which actually uses identical drawings of a wing in a flick book. So instead of using different images, I've just used one to see if I can evoke the idea of the beginnings of flight. So I made this work, and then after this, I went to Bali. And in Bali, I was walking through some rice fields, and I discovered this. Let me see if I can put it onto full screen again. I don't know how I did it in the first place. Maybe it's best just to continue. Okay, so this is a bird scarer. And you can see how this is working. A propeller is spinning round, and with that a spindle turns, and it has a piece of metal attached to it that's hitting a stick that's in turn is banging a metal pan. And I can be quite obsessive, so I went to go and have a look at this pretty much every day of my holiday. And then I went back home and I decided to make my own version of that in exactly the same dimensions, actually, which looks like this. Let me just close that down. So this was my version, and I went to pass this to my father in the kitchen, and because he was like, what is that thing? And I went to pass it to him, and as I did, the propeller started to spin. And then I was like, oh my God, I can make this work, where the viewer has to walk up and down with this piece of work, the propeller spins, and then a wing flaps, and then hopefully they're transported, if you will, into the beginnings of flight. So that was my idea. So this piece works indoors and outdoors. And I'll just show you how that works. So here's me walking around with it. So this was shown with Leonardo da Vinci's models in Whole City of Culture. And here's a school child walking along with it. Here's another one. What I love about this piece of work is that whether you're an adult or a child, when you activate this thing, it just makes you smile. And there's something about it, there's something about the simplicity of seeing the mechanics of how this is working that seems to be quite magical for people, or at least that's the feedback that I've been given. In an engineering point of view, after 6 weeks of this exhibition, most of these propellers broke. So then I had to go back to the drawing board to see how I could develop them further. And then I was in Ecuador. In case you haven't noticed, I travel quite a lot. And I was looking at firework frames in Ecuador because they're made of bamboo. I'm just going to show you one in action here.
Start recording, Christina.
So as you can see, they're pretty robust, and I quite like my time in Ecuador because nothing like this could happen in the UK because it would be against health and safety regulations. But here I could get quite close to one. So here are the firework frames. You can see them a bit more closer up. And this is what I did with them. So I decided to change the way the propellers were attached to the spindle using the techniques that the Ecuadorians were using for these firework frames, and it worked. So I had another exhibition, I think it was for 2 months, none of them broke. These propellers are bigger as well. And here, this is a bit of a grainy image, but you can see them. They were used last year in a solo show of mine, where people could walk around the gallery space with them, and the propellers would spin round and they'd travel through the show. So that brings me on to where I am at now and what I'm working on now, which is I'm looking at the work of a cinema pioneer like myself, but one from the Victorian times called Etienne Mouret, and this is his work. Sorry about this. This is a piece that he made, well, I shouldn't say piece because it's an experiment for him, of a stingray. And he was into chronophotography. So he was able to expose various images onto one photographic plate, which was quite revolutionary at the time, to look at movement. And what I really like about this is that it looks like a bird. It's an aquatic animal, it's a stingray. And I also like the fact that it was a scientific experiment. So I decided that I wanted to make my own version, and that's what I'm working on now. So the stingray was put on a contraption. This is the best image I could find here on the top. It's kind of attached to some sort of rod and some wooden kind of device, which I'm not advocating that people do, but From here, he had the camera and he was able to keep the stingray relatively still and just observe the undulation of the movement of the stingray. So this is my version, and I've only just started it, and I'm studying a flatfish. And here's my flatfish. And I've made my own contraption to animate it. So this is going to be for a gallery, and it's going to be on the glass facade of that gallery so that passers-by can happen upon it, I guess. So I'm trying to reach other audiences than audiences that I might reach in a gallery. So these are my various takes so far. So I find the flatfish fascinating because it starts off with eyes on both sides of its head. And then as it grows older, the eyes literally move. So one eye moves over to the other side of the head so that it can see clearly, because one side of it flattens out and lies on the seabed as it gets older, which means that if the eye didn't move round, it would be, one of the eyes would be redundant because it'd just be sat on the seabed. So I really like that idea of movement, that, you know, an eye can quite literally move in one lifetime over to the other side. And I think I'll end there. Thank you.